Your belly isn't lying to you. It's sending you a message. You eat carefully, you move your body, you've cut out the obvious junk, but that stubborn ring of fat around your midsection, the kind that sits deep, that doesn't budge no matter what you do, it keeps showing up month after month. Here's what most people never find out. That fat isn't just stored energy. That specific fat, the kind packed around your organs, deep inside your abdomen, responds to one hormone above almost everything else. Not insulin, not leptin, cortisol. And cortisol has a regulator, a brake, a mineral that your body depends on to shut off the stress response when it's done its job. When that mineral runs low, cortisol doesn't switch off. It stays elevated for hours, for days, silently. And every day it stays high, it sends a direct signal to those deep fat cells to store more, hold tighter, and release nothing. That mineral is magnesium. If you're over 40, if you feel more tired than your schedule explains, if your sleep doesn't restore you the way it used to, there is peer-reviewed research that connects all three of those things to a mineral deficiency that most people never check for. This video will explain exactly what that research says, why it matters for the fat around your midsection specifically, and what you can do about it, without hype, without a supplement pitch, and without claiming anything the science doesn't actually support. Stay with me.
Let's ground this in evidence right from the start, because you deserve to know the science, not just take someone's word for it. Magnesium is a cofactor in more than 300 enzymatic reactions inside your body. That number comes from a peer-reviewed paper published in the journal Nutrients in 2015, cited across hundreds of subsequent studies. These reactions touch everything: energy production, blood sugar regulation, muscle contraction, nerve transmission, and the regulation of your stress hormones. Now here's where the data gets concerning. A large-scale analysis using National Dietary Survey data found that approximately 48% of adults in the United States were consuming less magnesium than their bodies required. Nearly half the adult population with an intake shortfall of the very mineral that governs their stress response. The connection to cortisol isn't theoretical. A controlled study published on PubMed demonstrated that magnesium deficiency caused measurable upregulation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the control system your brain uses to release cortisol. When magnesium was deficient, corticotropin-releasing hormone transcription increased and ACTH levels rose, both direct upstream triggers for cortisol production. When your magnesium runs low, your brain's stress control system goes into overdrive. The alarm keeps ringing after the threat has passed. That is the mechanism. That is what the peer-reviewed literature shows. And that is what connects a mineral deficiency, one that nearly half the population carries, to a hormone that directly determines where your body stores fat. Now let me bring this into your daily life, because this isn't abstract. If you drink 1 or 2 cups of coffee each morning, caffeine accelerates urinary magnesium excretion. Your baseline is being pulled lower every day before you've eaten your first meal. If you sit at a desk for most of your working hours, your cortisol never gets the physical discharge that movement provides. The stress hormone rises in response to mental pressure, but your muscles, which would normally burn it off, never get the chance. It stays in your bloodstream longer. If you're regularly sleeping fewer than 7 hours, your magnesium depletion compounds overnight, precisely during the window your body relies on to recover. And if you're over 40, your gastrointestinal tract has already started to lose efficiency at absorbing magnesium from food. That's not a personal failing. It's an age-related shift in gut physiology documented in the clinical literature. It means a diet that looks adequate on paper may be delivering less magnesium to your cells than you think. Stack those four things: caffeine, sedentary stress, disrupted sleep, and reduced absorption, and you have a portrait of what the average adult over 40 is living with every single day. Your effort in the gym, your discipline with food, your commitment to better habits, all of it runs into a wall when cortisol is chronically elevated in the background, because cortisol isn't asking your fat cells for permission, it's giving them orders. The question is whether your body has the mineral resource it needs to countermand those orders.
Let me explain the biology, and I'm going to keep it simple enough that it actually sticks. Think of your stress response like a fire alarm in a building. When there's smoke, it goes off. That's necessary. But the alarm also needs to stop ringing once the smoke is gone. Magnesium is the switch that stops the alarm. Your brain has a system, the HPA axis, or hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, that triggers cortisol release when you're under stress. After the stressor passes, this system is supposed to quiet down. Magnesium plays a direct role in suppressing that shutdown. When magnesium is sufficient, the alarm turns off. Cortisol fades. Your body comes back to rest. When magnesium is depleted, that shutdown weakens. Research published on PubMed showed that low magnesium directly increased the transcription of corticotropin-releasing hormone in the brain region governing the HPA axis, meaning the body keeps generating the signal to produce more cortisol, even when there's no active threat. Now here's where visceral fat enters specifically. Visceral fat, surrounding your organs deep in your abdomen, has a higher density of glucocorticoid receptors than subcutaneous fat, the fat just under your skin. That's documented in the peer-reviewed literature. Cortisol binds to those receptors. When it does, it promotes fat storage in those deep depots and suppresses fat release. The loop: low magnesium keeps cortisol elevated, elevated cortisol preferentially targets visceral fat, and visceral fat holds on. Your effort doesn't reach that fat. Cortisol is standing in the way. You might be thinking, fine, I'll just take a magnesium supplement. That's half right, but there are two things you need to understand before you buy anything. One of them could be the difference between results and none at all. First, let me show you what chronic low magnesium actually looks like day to day. Most people don't connect these signals. Do you wake between 2 and 4 in the morning and struggle to fall back asleep? A double-blind clinical trial found that magnesium supplementation significantly reduced early morning awakening, improved sleep efficiency, and measurably lowered serum cortisol levels. The cortisol connection isn't incidental. These things are directly linked. Do you experience muscle cramps, particularly in your calves or feet? Magnesium governs how muscle fibers contract and release. Low magnesium is one of the most common and under-recognized causes. Do you feel edgy or mentally restless without a clear trigger? Research shows magnesium deficiency upregulates the brain's stress signaling system, and that restoring magnesium can normalize that overactivation. And here's the one that surprises most people. When blood sugar spikes after a carbohydrate-heavy meal, your kidneys excrete more magnesium in response to elevated insulin. A diet high in refined carbohydrates actively drains your magnesium, which elevates cortisol, which promotes visceral fat storage, which worsens insulin sensitivity. It is a self-reinforcing loop. And the mineral that could interrupt it is the one being flushed out by the very eating pattern that started the problem. Now, let's talk about what to do. Before we get to specifics, consider this. People who maintain metabolic health into their 60s and 70s, low abdominal fat, good energy, stable blood sugar, consistently share a few patterns. They protect sleep above almost everything else. They eat diets built around whole foods, including dark leafy greens, legumes, and seeds. They move after meals instead of sitting back down. and they carry lower chronic cortisol levels than their peers. That last point is not a coincidence. It is the result of the other three working together over years. They are not grinding through punishing gym sessions or following extreme elimination diets. What they have, sometimes without knowing why, is a hormonal environment that allows the body to function the way it was designed. Cortisol rises when needed and quiets down when it's done. Fat cells receive the right signals. Recovery actually happens during sleep instead of being undermined by it. That version of metabolic health is not reserved for people with ideal genetics or those who started young. It is the product of specific, repeatable habits built on understanding how the body actually works. Understanding the magnesium cortisol connection is where that understanding starts. Here is what the research supports. 3 levers in order of priority. Start with food, not supplements. The best dietary sources of magnesium include pumpkin seeds, which are among the highest per gram of any whole food. Dark leafy greens, spinach and Swiss chard specifically, are strong contributors. Black beans, almonds, cashews, avocado, and dark chocolate above 70% cacao all deliver meaningful amounts. Food-based magnesium comes with cofactors that support absorption and avoids the rapid excretion that can occur with high supplemental doses. Aim to include at least 2 or 3 of these in your daily eating before reaching for a pill. If you supplement, the form matters significantly. Organic magnesium forms, citrate and glycinate, are absorbed more effectively than magnesium oxide. A clinical study directly comparing the two found that magnesium citrate produced significantly higher absorption in normal volunteers given the same dose. Magnesium glycinate, bonded to the amino acid glycine, has additional evidence for supporting sleep quality specifically. The dosing range in clinical trials typically runs 200 to 400 milligrams of elemental magnesium per day. If you have kidney conditions or take prescription medications, talk to your doctor before starting. Take a 10-minute walk after your largest meal. A randomized crossover study published in Scientific Reports in 2025 found that a 10-minute walk taken immediately after eating produced significantly lower peak blood glucose levels than both resting and a 30-minute walk taken later. Lower blood glucose means lower insulin, and lower insulin means less magnesium lost through to kidneys. It is a direct upstream intervention in the cortisol loop. No equipment required, just 10 minutes after you eat. One thing I want to be direct about before we close. Magnesium does not burn fat. It does not guarantee weight loss. What the peer-reviewed literature supports is this. Adequate magnesium helps regulate HPA axis activity that governs cortisol, and chronically elevated cortisol is one of the documented biological barriers to visceral fat loss, particularly in adults dealing with poor sleep, metabolic stress, and reduced absorption after 40. Supporting that system is meaningful, but it is one lever, not a complete solution. It does not replace consistent nutrition, physical activity, or sound medical care. Think of it as removing a specific roadblock, not as building the entire road. The research referenced in this video is peer-reviewed and publicly accessible. Every source with a direct PubMed URL is linked in the description below. Not journal names, not vague attributions, direct links so you can read the abstracts, follow the citations, and draw your own conclusions. That is how this channel operates. Real information, sourced cleanly, so you stay in control of your own health decisions. Here's what I want to leave you with. The belly fat that won't move isn't always a discipline problem. Sometimes it's a hormonal environment problem. When cortisol is chronically elevated because its natural regulator is chronically depleted, your body is biologically blocked from responding to the effort you're putting in. The signal to release stored fat gets drowned out by the louder cortisol signal telling your visceral fat cells to hold on. That is not a personal failure. It is a documented physiological mechanism, and physiology, unlike willpower, can be addressed with targeted information and repeatable habits. Check your diet for magnesium-rich foods. If you supplement, choose a form the body can actually absorb. Walk for 10 minutes after your next meal. Protect your sleep. The research is clear that magnesium, sleep quality, and cortisol regulation are tightly connected. These are not dramatic overhauls. They are precise interventions aimed at a mechanism that most people over 40 are never told exists. If this gave you a new lens on something you've been struggling with, type yes in the comments. It helps me understand what's landing. And if someone you care about has been putting in the work without seeing results, share this with them. Sometimes the missing piece isn't effort, it's information.